My dad once took me to the dogs when I was 12. He just had a work function. He wasn't a Greyhound Racing guy. I mean,
Yeah.
he'd been to the dogs, but like maybe you've been to a rugby match. It doesn't mean you're a rugby person.
Yeah.
Right, okay. And I went there. I didn't want to go, and I sat there and I had £2 place bet on a dog. Oh, I played it careful. £2 place bet of my pocket money on a dog called Sarah Jones on the tote.
Mm-hmm.
And the lights went down and the traps went up. And Sarah Jones, of course, placed, and as you know,
Slippery slope at that point, isn't it?
you only need to be bitten once by
Yeah.
that type of drug. And, I saw the cut and thrust of the betting ring, and I'd found my place. I believe that there's so many people who are quite good at lots of things, and they don't specialise, and they then underachieve, and they go from minimum wage job to minimum wage job because they can't decide whether to be a doctor, a lawyer, an architect, whatever, and then they have a go at these things and do them for 6 months, and then they reverse because it's not quite perfect and they end up doing nothing. Now, that night I was bitten by Greyhound Racing. I then really didn't go to school. I just went to the betting shop, Plumpton Races on the train, blagged in, buy Bookie for free, Hove Dogs, the William Hill betting shop in Burgess Hill, Hassocks Racing, who were independent in Hassocks, which was the next village along. I used to get the train to Lingfield, which I remember was very painful and an annoying journey. And my dad did something that I look back now and I realised was real love. That he wasn't interested in Greyhound Racing.
Yeah.
But when there was a big night at Hackney, Stapler's Show, you remember these dogs?
Yes.
Like that first night when they opened the other side at Hackney and I saw Victor Chandler bet, the Power Twins were there. That was a ring. That was a proper ring. I'm sure you were there.
Yes.
Yeah. And I went up and I said, Mr. Chandler, can you sign my race card? Afterwards, and my dad took me to those. He said, that's okay, it's Saturday night, I'll drive you to the St Ledger, we'll go to the first round. I saw Tony Morris with the massive whiteboard, immaculate. I stood in front, there was Billy Cook with the big fuzzy hair, and I'd say to him, £5 on track 1, he'd say, I can't call bets in, kid, you'll have to get in the queue. Because I might have nicked a price, and they were all round him, weren't they?
Yeah.
They were on him, but he never flustered.
Yeah.
Yeah, or the Power Twins were different. They were more extrovert, the cigars and chucking money in the crowd. They had a different identity, didn't they? But my dad took me round to watch these bookmakers work, and I look back now and I think that was very selfless of him and kind, and he didn't make excuses not to do it. Later on, after I'd been to a few St Ledger finals, I said to my dad, I think we can go to the main ring now. And there I was, and I'd stand in front of Tony Morris, and I'd go back to Hove Dogs, and I'd say to Lofty, who worked for Beau Brown West End Racing, he was there clerking, I said, Lofty, one day we're going to sponsor the Greyhound Derby, one day we're going to be bookies at the Derby. Mm-hmm. And then when I was 19 or just 20, and I was working at Victor Chandler, the seniors had called down and said, there's a horse called Pension Fund, it's 33-1. The trainers went out on the piss with us last night and said it's going to probably win. And I backed it to win 10 grand, and it won. And I went in the next day and said to a man who'd started betting on football on something called Asian handicaps, no one had heard of them. And he kept saying to me, oh, it's going well, but I don't think it'll last this. I think I'll just get a few quid out of it at the moment. And so I went into him and I said, been really, thanks a lot for giving me the job, but I've got my hands on 10 grand, and I'm going to go and depart and become a bookie and make my way. And that man quickly became a billionaire, and his name's Tony Bloom. So I think
oh really?
I think that I've made better decisions.
That of course, that's the whole Brighton connection, isn't it?
This is it. Is that Tony's a Brighton boy. I'm a Brighton boy. I was introduced to him by Kelvin Richardson, who sadly passed last year, Tony was working for Victor Chandler doing the football. And so I met Tony Bloom there. He has his own business, Star Lizard. I have Star Sports. A punterism is punters love saying that he owns my business. They've got this in their head because they're not sort of focusing on running their own race and worrying about their own finances. He has no ownership whatsoever. I wish he did. Then we wouldn't have worked from above a betting shop in Goring for a decade, and we wouldn't have spent the next decade working from a old school with rugby club doors and outside toilets before we've now bought our own office. No, he is obviously the greatest gambler that there will ever be, and I think that his work ethic was incredible. I used to remember as a 19-year-old, I'd go into the office and there were a couple of chairs lined up outside his office. He had his own office where he'd sit and select his bets, and there was a blanket over them. I'd say, what was that? He'd had a few hours sleep on the Friday night.
Yes.
He worked through the night studying the form on the football, and at the time he just picked his own bets on the Premier League and the Italian. And quite a funny story is that when he started betting on the Italian football, it wasn't going very well, and people said, "Are you sure about this? Are you sure you know what you're doing?" It turned out he did.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, but he is a man of absolute integrity. And I'll never forget that the first day I went to do work experience with Beau Brown, I was probably about 13 years old, West End Racing, Beau Brown. People will remember him. He bet at Hove Dogs, he bet at Pompey Dogs. He now bets at the races, West End Racing. And I was so excited, and it was a Wednesday afternoon in the holidays, Wednesday when they used to run in the afternoon at Hove, and I remember it was the summer's day, and I stood next to Matt Brown, whose son Mason now runs Star Construction.
Yes.
And we lost Matt Brown about 7 or 8 years ago. He died of a heart attack in his early 40s. He was a tough guy, and he used to communicate his instructions to his staff in a way that now possibly HR departments and the local Citizens Advice Bureau wouldn't appreciate, but they did understand clearly the communication and follow it. Anyway, I stood next to him and shadow clerked, which meant that I tried to get the bets down and I missed the odd one, but I was learning how to clerk and stuff.
Yes.
Right. And anyway, my dad stopped me before I went out, and I was rushing up to Hassocks Station to get the train down to Brighton, where you change to Hove, and then you'd go to the orchard, the back entrance, to get into the bags as it used to be. My dad stopped me and he said, "Wait there." He said, "You're going to work for so many different bookmakers. Take the good, leave the bad." And I think that every single person you can learn from, and the best people to learn from are those who've made a huge amount of money and lost it. Why have they fallen? Why?
Yes.
Why? Now, Harry McAdam, who I said earlier went to Eaton, he's one of my best friends. He said, "Don't underestimate Eaton. Don't just think it's a bunch of silly hoorays." He said it was the best teachers in the world. I said, "What was the best thing you learned?" He said to me, back in the Greek or Roman times, when the victorious general would come back from battle, he would enter the city walls and everybody would be going, "Floyd, Floyd, Floyd," and they'd hold you up in the air and you'd put your sword up and say, "I won the battle, I won the battle." There was a man called an auriga, Auriga. An auriga was a senior slave. It was the auriga's job to walk just behind you, and whilst everybody was saying, "Floyd, and you're the best, you're the champ, you're never going to lose, you're the undefeated," "You are mortal, you are mortal, you are mortal." Just to remind you that next time you go out, you might get your head chopped off. And I think that in the gambling industry, very, very few professional gamblers or bookmakers retire gracefully. That's what Star Property is about for me.
Yes.
Spreading risk.
Yeah.
Eventually, a wave will come over you.
Yes.
You will bump into a cleverer punter, a cleverer bookmaker, and he will take all.
Yes.
Because I think that as people get older, even when they try not to, I believe that the game shuns youth. Everybody loves to say about a new young bookie, "He's not going to make it pay. Who does he think he is? New professional gambler, idiot. He's had a good run for 3 months. Let's see how he's doing in a decade." And the revered figures are very much really old farts.
Yes.
But who stayed in the game because they've delegated to younger people for decades. But that doesn't really get mentioned when they're being made a lord or whatever, right? And I think that it's only natural that you think, I've stood the test of time longer, I must thus know more. I think that's very, very dangerous. I think it's important to leave, possibly when there's still something left on the table, before the game leaves you behind. So I would say that the best piece of advice my father ever gave me was, take the good, leave the bad.
Interesting. Because I remember having a discussion with somebody years ago, talking about the people who do what they do just because of the cut and thrust. When you get to the wealth of somebody like, I don't know, the
Betfred.
Yeah, Betfred. Why would you get out of bed in the morning? You couldn't possibly burn all your money. Would you
know
be
any other way, did they?
Well, I was going to say, would you be one of those characters who would, or would you eventually go, do you know what?
Look, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and I'm spending my whole life gambling and taking bets and all the rest of it, and there's nothing noble going on there. However, Star do support many charitable ventures. We've given huge sums of money to a children's home in Peru. Star Property are in the process of working out how to open a children's home in Hove. Every time there's any type of charitable appeal, we give to it. We give to food banks near our betting shops. I like to think that I help people wherever I can and do what I can. Many people come to me for, help or advice or whatever, because they come to me now for that Tony Morris strength, where they've seen me always keep going, so they gain strength in that, in their bad time. I hope that I can create this enormous organic group of companies that goes on and makes money, but also has lots of charitable activities in it. So, I never watch a race. I never watch a race ever. I don't even have the racing channel on my television. I wouldn't, because it would only get me at it, because if it wins, I then want to watch the next race to see if the punter loses it back.
Yes.
Yeah, you have to stand back. At some point, you must stand back from the game and let it happen. Or you might as well just do it all yourself, and then you won't be able to do as much anyway, and you'll just kill yourself.
Yes.
Right, because your mind, you can't cope with these ups and downs forever.
No.
Being too close to the fire. You must step back.
Yes.
And
you think you may even, it sounds as though you may even get personal gratification by going down perhaps the charity route, and doing things that are...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Look, I think that, the game is absolutely ruthless. I only work with nice people. I will only work with people who I like, because it's too painful to work with really, really unpleasant creatures, right? But when you're a bookmaker, I think that gambling's not known for attracting kindness and empathy and sympathy and giving. It's people who've got money who want more.
Dog eat dog.
Yeah, it's completely dog eat dog. It's utterly ruthless, and you have to become very hard in that and let these people bounce off you as they try it on, and you just say no, and then they scream about how unfair that is, and then you keep making money. But after that, after the battle, it's then nice to be able to support people who genuinely need help and who are genuinely innocent.